All right, I started it.
All right. Welcome, AP Statistics students. Today we're going to be learning about conditional probability. Okay, and I know we all love probability. So this conditional probability is going to be any question that says, what is the probability of this given that? Or it has a statement at the beginning saying, like, if this happens, what is the probability that this happens given that the other thing happens? Okay, so anything that says given that, that's going to be a conditional probability. Okay, and the way you write that in probabilical formulas, okay, it's going to be the probability of event A happening given that event B happens. So that's that little line right there. And this is actually a formula that's on your formula sheet right here, so you will not have to memorize this. But the formula is the probability of A given B equals the probability of A and B divided by the probability of B. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. So how you're going to do this is I got this little table here, and anytime you have probability, I think you should do this table. It's actually really helpful. So let's say that the probability of A happening is 0.6. That would be 60%. So that means the probability of A not happening is 0.4 because all this stuff has to add up to 1. And let's say the probability of B happening is 0.5. Oh, geez. 5. So the probability of B not happening would also be 0.5. So now we got all those numbers set up. So the probability of A and B happening, let's just say that's going to be 0.2. Okay, so that means the probability, this right here, because this has to add up to 0.5, so what would that be? That would be 0.3 right there. So we're just doing a basic table right here, so that means this has to be 0.4. And this has to be 0.1. Boom. So let's say the problem asks, what is the probability of A given B? So now that we have all our numbers here, we can just go over here and we can do the probability of A and B is 0.2 divided by the probability of B happening, which would be 0.5, which would be 0.2 divided by 0.5. You do that calculation and that's your answer. Pretty straightforward. So another thing you could do to make it, well, okay, so that's how you do, conditional probability. So a lot of the times what happens with these problems on the exam is that it'll give you one of these parts and you have to go find the other one because this is an algebraical statement. So let's just say that we know, for example, that the probability of A given B is 0.2 divided by 0.5, and we know the probability of B is 0.5, and we don't have this number. And we don't have this number. We don't have like any of those numbers, and you would forced to be used this one and this one. So if you have this and you have this, pretty simple algebraical statement. You just multiply the probability of A given B times the probability of B, and then you get the probability of A and B. So that's just a normal algebraical statement. So let's do one of these problems with more context right now because you always got to have context in your answers. So let's say, this is not A, this is not B. Let's say the sample size, is high school students. And the probability of being on the football team is 0.2. And the probability of not being on the football team is what we have, which is 0.8, because again, all those numbers would add up to 1. So let's say the question asks us to find, let's fill in this first. This probability of being on the baseball team. Let's do that. And then not baseball team. So say the question asks us to find the probability of being on the baseball team. And we know that the probability of being on the baseball team and on the football team is given in the statement as 0.05. Geez, I can't write 5. So 5%. So how we would do that? Well, in order to do that, we would have to be given this in the question. Say the question gives us that the probability of A given B is 0.07. Okay? So then we have this, which is 0.07 equals the probability of A and B, which is 0.05 over the probability of this, which is what we're trying to find, should be X. So then you would algebraically, you flip that around, so then the probability of being on the baseball team equals 0.5 divided by 0.07, and then whatever that is, that's your answer. Pretty straightforward there. So that is conditional probability on, pretty straightforward. You always got to remember that A given B, and there's a lot of different ways in the question that it could be conditional probability. It's not always going to say, given that, this, something that. So there's a lot of tricky wording, so you just have to make sure if there's a set condition that they put and you have this entire graph, you just have to make sure that's conditional probability. So you just have to be careful with that. There's a lot of tricky ways they put it. So, any questions?
No.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, that's conditional.